Imagine it's a Tuesday morning in Kuala Lumpur. A mid-level manager at a semiconductor distributor site at his desk when the receptionist calls. There's some people here to see you. They're not customers. They're not competitors. They're U.S. officials from the Department of Commerce. And they've flown halfway around the world to ask you one question. Where did those chips go? Because when you sell U.S. origin technology overseas, the deal doesn't end with the shipment. Uncle Sam might show up later to make sure it didn't end up in the wrong hands. That's what we're talking about today. End user checks. How export controls are actually enforced overseas. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to Midweek Sitrep, your bi-weekly briefing on what's happening in the world of national security. My name is Jerry Fowler, and I'm your host. Every other week, I give you the context you need to see what's really going on so you can stay mission-focused. Today, we're diving into one of the least known but most important tools the U.S. has to keep its technology from powering rival militaries. That's end user checks. If you've never heard of them, don't worry. Most people haven't. But they're the way the U.S. makes sure sensitive exports like advanced chips, lab gear, and aerospace components don't end up where they're not supposed to go. This isn't theory. It's not just paperwork in Washington. It's U.S. officials flying across the world, knocking on doors, and verifying in person what companies are really doing with American technology. In this episode, we'll break down what end user checks are, why they exist, how they actually work, and what they mean for businesses, governments, and you, the listener. Along the way, we'll look at real cases from Malaysia to Turkey and explain why this obscure process is at the heart of today's tech and security battles. Let's get started. What are end user checks? Now, we've talked before about export controls, but here's a little refresher. Export controls are rules, but rules on paper don't stop shipments on the ground. Once an item leaves the US, it doesn't just vanish into the global supply chain. BIS, if you remember the Bureau of Industry and Security, they want to know where it ends up. So they do this through end user checks. And there's two types. There's PLC, pre-license checks. Before a license gets approved, BIS must confirm that the company applying is real, legitimate, and capable of using the product for its stated purpose. This is very important. The second is PSV, post-shipment verifications. After the export goes out, BIS may follow up in person to see if the product is where it's supposed to be, being used how it's supposed to be used. Now, these checks are carried out by export control officers. Those are U.S. officials assigned to embassies in places like Beijing, Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi, and Singapore. They work alongside commercial attachés and sometimes with local law enforcement agencies. Here's the key. They're not spies. They're not auditors in cubicles. They're U.S. officers in foreign countries knocking on doors, asking hard questions, and making judgment calls that ripple across global markets. So why do we have this system? Why go through all this trouble? Because without verification, export controls are just honor codes. And history is full of examples of adversaries getting US or Western tech despite these paper rules. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union used elaborate front companies to acquire computers and machine tools through neutral countries. In the 1990s, missile technology leaked into rogue regimes because suppliers took buyers at their word. And after the Gulf War, investigators found Iraqi military programs stuffed with Western dual-use tech that had been shipped under civilian pretenses. That's why the US created a standing system of end-use checks. Rules aren't enough. You need proof. So today, the stakes are even higher. Advanced chips, telecom gear, satellite components. They don't just fuel economies. They fuel AI surveillance states, hypersonic missile programs, and battlefield drones. So the reason we have end-user checks is simple. Trust, but verify. So what kind of products are getting checked? Well, here's the thing. Not every toaster, smartphone, or laptop is getting a knock on the door. The Bureau of Industry and Security isn't interested in chasing down microwaves in Manila. Instead, they focus on the crown jewels, the kinds of technologies that, if they slipped into the wrong hands, could tilt the balance of power. Think of it as triage. Go after the gear that matters most to national security. Now, that list usually looks like high-performance computing chips like GPUs and accelerators powerful enough to train artificial intelligence, simulate missile trajectories, or supercharge cyber attacks. These aren't your consumer-grade graphic cards. There's also telecom and network equipment, such as routers, switches, and base stations. On one hand, they run your Zoom calls. On the other, they can form the backbone of a surveillance system or secure command and control network. There's also semiconductor manufacturing tools, etching systems, deposition gear, lithography machines. With these, a country doesn't just buy chips. It can start making its own. And controlling these tools means controlling who gets to play in the semiconductor big leagues. There's also dual-use technology, that gray zone gear. Drones, lasers, advanced sensors. Perfectly legitimate for research labs or engineering firms, but just as useful for missile guidance or military drone swarms. There's also direct military sensitive items, avionics for fighter jets, satellite components for intelligence gathering, night vision optics, explosives, the stuff that, by design, feeds straight into a war machine. Put simply, BIS goes after the technologies that punch above their weight. The items that, if diverted, don't just make someone money, they give adversaries a military edge. So how do officials actually do this? Here's how a typical in-use check works. First, there's selection. BIS flags a company based on license applications, shipping records, or intelligence. Risky jurisdictions or unusual patterns get priority. Then there's coordination. The export control officer at the embassy reaches out to the company and sometimes local authorities. In cooperative countries, local law enforcement may even tag along. In less cooperative ones, it's a lot more delicate. Third, there's the visit, where the officers show up, sometimes unannounced, sometimes announced. They may ask to see the product in use, check inventory, review paperwork, and interview staff. Lastly, there's the report back. They write up the results. If it looks good, the company builds credibility, and future licenses are easier. If it looks bad, licenses dry up, names land on blacklist, and in some cases, criminal charges can follow. It's less about catching companies in the act and more about maintaining a credible system of deterrence. When word spreads that BIS is knocking on doors in your region, compliance levels suddenly improve. Okay, story time. Let's talk about the Malaysia AI chip diversion case. In 2024, BIS agents in Malaysia followed up on shipments of high-performance GPUs. On paper, the chips were headed to a local reseller. Everything looked fine in the paperwork. But when officers visited, the office was nearly empty. There was minimal staff, sparse records, and the product trail pointed north, straight toward a blacklisted Chinese AI company known for military contracts. Now, that one visit became evidence in a U.S. indictment against the 3 individuals caught trying to smuggle restricted chips into China. And this case is ongoing. It's very interesting, and when it finally wraps up, I'm going to do a show on it. So please stay tuned. But the lesson here is end-use checks aren't just box ticking. They can blow open smuggling rings. So why should you care? Because these weren't gaming cards. They were the silicon powering advanced AI. Without checks, US chips could have gone straight into Chinese surveillance systems or weapons development. So for the casual listener, it shows the US isn't just setting rules, it's enforcing them globally. For you business owners, it's a wake-up call. If someone down your supply chain is playing games, your company could get caught up in criminal cases. For everyone else, this is what extraterritorial enforcement looks like. Washington rules carried out thousands of miles away. End-use checks aren't just about chips and lab equipment. They're about power projection. They extend U.S. law across borders. When America's tech goes abroad, its rules travel too. They strengthen alliances. Cooperative countries help enforce the system, while uncooperative ones risk losing trust and market access. They raise global compliance standards. Companies everywhere now know sloppy records can bring BIS officers to their doorstep. This isn't just enforcement. It's a form of economic statecraft, projecting power not with tanks or missiles, but with rules and accountability. So before we close, let's talk about some compliance takeaways. So for companies, keep your records clean. If you can't trace your shipments, you're a liability. Vet your resellers. Weak links invite security. And expect a visit. If you're operating in high-risk regions, BIS already knows your address. And for the governments and allies, cooperation pays. Countries that let BIS operate freely stay in good standing, and those that block or stall face trade and diplomatic friction. So the next time you hear about export controls, don't imagine some dusty regulations sitting on a shelf in Washington. Instead, imagine a U.S. officer stepping off a plane in Kuala Lumpur, walking unannounced into a distributor's office and asking to see the books. That's what end-user checks are. America projecting power through paperwork and persistence, turning rules into real-world action. Because in today's world, it's not just about missiles and tanks. It's about chips, sensors, and servers, the invisible infrastructure of modern power. And when those technologies move across borders, so do America's rules. That's how the U.S. enforces its technology controls overseas. And that's why, in this era, everything is national security, even the chips on your desk. That's it for today's Midweek Sitrep. If this episode got you thinking, don't let the conversation stop here. Head over to the Insider Brief on Substack and subscribe. It's where we dig deeper, answer your questions, and preview what's next. We're also on YouTube, where you'll find short clips, interviews, and bonus content. Make sure to subscribe there if you haven't already. And if you want to support the show, go to everythingisnationalsecurity.com and check out our merch. Every shirt and hat helps keep Midweek Sitrep independent and growing. Subscribe, share, and stay sharp. I'm Jerry Fowler, and remember, everything is national security. See you next time. Midweek Sitrep with Jerry Fowler is an independent production of OpScent Media Group, LLC. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Listeners should consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions based upon the content discussed. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host, Jerry Fowler, and any guest, and do not reflect the official policy, position, or endorsement of any current or former employer, client, government agency, military organization, educational institution, or any other entity for which the host, Jerry Fowler, may be affiliated. Mention of a company, product, or service does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation. Any references are provided for informational purposes only. This podcast does not disclose any classified, proprietary, or confidential information. All discussions are based upon publicly available information and personal expertise.
Everything's national security. Opset Media Group, LLC.